welcome everybody to PEMA TV.
Welcome to July 18th, 2014.
Just take care of some real quick business. One, apologize for being late. It's my fault. We were running a little late, and I let time get away. I was spending time with my lovely wife. I haven't seen her much this week, so I was trying to kiss a little butt and spend a little time with her.
Well, it's been a little rough week anyway.
Don't forget, you can always head out to, if you're in the Gladewater area, you can always head out to
Metaluna Boutique and Stones.
The website is down. Be sure and go to the address you see in front of you, the Facebook page. Just type into the search bar Metaluna Boutique and you will find it. Not a problem. Be sure and join and check us there. And just because I want to get right to it, because the guy we've got tonight, one, we had to almost kill 3 people just to get him scheduled on. But that's because he's such a good friend of ours and has been for the last couple of years. Tonight we are joined by Mr. John Tenney from Realm of the Weird, the
Creep Master,
the Creep Meister himself. And John, just so you know, you're not related. Just so everybody knows, because the eyebrow is so iconic, you're not related to DeForest Kelley at all, are you?
I am not.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I am not. No, there's Dave Schrader from Darkness Radio and I have an ongoing argument to wonder who came up with the eyebrow first. And the logical solution is always DeForest Kelley. It's neither Dave nor I.
Well, I can't think of anybody before him that made a pronounced eyebrow movement that became iconic like that.
I can.
Right.
Every mother who has had a child acting up. That's where DeForest Kelley got it.
Yeah, but mother's spit is also the same chemical composition as 409.
Well, yeah.
John, what have you been up? We haven't talked in a little over a year. What have you been up to, my friend?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's strange in the world that we live in, right? But I've always had, every year I take on a new client. I never have more than like 3 clients that I'm working with. So that's just the normal, trying to figure out what's going on in weird people's lives if they think they have something going on in their house that's paranormally related, or but doing that, and then just the day-to-day world of researching, writing, working with different groups and different people to try and get them to construct new ideas about the way that they're going toward their lives in the paranormal and the supernatural, just trying to get people to think a little bit more outside of the box than what a lot of people have come to learn over the past 10 years by watching television. Yeah,
the television thing, we kind of rag on it quite a bit here. And you know what? Maybe we shouldn't, because if it weren't for the shows, the paranormal wouldn't be water cooler talk. It would be going to the Lulu bin kind of talk like it used to be. But even still, there's some serious things that they don't do, and I know they're just for entertainment. I get that, but there should still be some responsibility when it's when they know there's that many people actually doing what they're doing on television. I would think there would be some kind of, I don't want to say moral obligation, but that's the only phrase that fits. That they should show them how to do it safely, how to do it properly, as opposed to doing it entertainingly. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And for the minuses that come along with the popularity of kind of the paranormal social media and pop culture that we've seen arise, there are obviously a lot of negatives, but one of the things, like you said, there are some good things that have come out of it. One, it does become water cooler talk. People are more open and able to talk about their experiences, and that's fantastic. And the other thing is there really have been, for as many bad or crazy or inexperienced by choice groups who investigate, people have become more well informed. The show, if you watch a show that came out in 2006, you could basically tell anybody, we're going to do this and that's going to be a ghost. Now some people have actually read up and studied, or know someone that reads up and studies, or have exchanged ideas with someone who's been in it for a long time. And people don't toe the line so quickly anymore. And so that's a good thing, too.
Unfortunately, though, with the shows, people are getting more and more to the point to where they're constantly saying everything's a demon.
Oh, God.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's that's the hyperbolic nature of media, right? Like the scare factor. When what would be really interesting is just having a show that with smart people doing smart experiments and saying smart things, and even allowing the people on the shows to kind of elucidate and rhapsodize more about what they're doing. That's you two and I and the people that we've met. It's about the conversations that we have and the ideas that we generate by having those conversations. There's not really any paranormal show on television where you get to hear people just talking about the ideas that they might have of what's going on.
We almost need a Merv Griffin in the paranormal, don't we?
I would like to see that.
I'm going to nominate you. I think you would be absolutely perfect for that.
Years ago, I think probably going on 10 or 12 years ago, SyFy channel tried to do a paranormal talk show. They had a guy who was the host. I don't even remember who the host was now, but every week on like Saturday nights, they'd have an alien abductee, a contactee, a ghost hunter, and they would have these kind of Merv Griffin-esque talk shows. And I just think it was too ahead of the curve. If you would put it on now, I think someone would watch it. But back then, nobody was really interested in it.
Right. Well, I only bring up the demon thing because I actually had a customer come in the shop today who apparently had like 9 different demon encounters.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, every time a movie comes out, it's funny how that plague of that very same kind of haunting, hallucination, or whatever is portrayed in the movie, it's funny how there's a plague of that.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the sheeple reaction, I think. But John, because we've discussed this before, and I'm going to show everybody because I can reach this. This is within arm's reach on my desk. Is one of my favorite books that I've just barely gotten started on, and it's called Ghosts, and by Mr. Hans Holzer. Unfortunately, there's about 4 columns per page, or 2 columns per page. It's very small print. But actually, what this is a documentarian's dream, because from talking with our mutual friend David Roundtree, who actually got to work with Hans, he said Hans was a superior documentarian of what was going on around him. So this is a book collection of every experiment, journal, whatever that he's ever did. And the reason I want to show this is because I don't think enough people that are even in the paranormal or claim to be in the paranormal that are in a group, they don't look at the history. There has not been enough research done or enough exploration of just the history of what goes on, because people are repeating experiments and they think they're the first one to do it, but when they get told that, hey, Hans Holder or some other figure from the past already tried this,
right?
50 years ago they got the same result you just got. Maybe not on the same equipment, but So if people would
there's a book that I tell people about all the time, and you can download it for free because it's such an old book. But there was a book that came out right around the turn of the century in the 1900s. It's called Phantasms of the Living by a guy named Edmund Gurney. And that's a 700-page book that documents 500 different apparitional encounters throughout about 30 years. And it's written by Edmund Gurney, who was a professor at Cambridge University, and it's co-authored by a couple other professors, one from Oxford and the other one from Cambridge too. And their experiments that they did back in the turn of the century, and they were doing things like trying to figure out if electromagnetic fields had something to do with it, if water had something to do with it, if crystallized granite and crystals had something to do with it. And these were experiments being done now 114 years ago, and people don't even know that someone was doing that. Even the term ghost hunter, there's a news article from the New York Times from, I think, about 1911, and the headline is Ghost Hunters. So, I mean, even that term has been around for over 100 years. People don't realize that.
Right, and I personally hate the term because it's not descriptive.
Well, and what we did around the holidays is we went through old movies that have hauntings in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Scrooge, and there's one called Beyond Tomorrow. And some of the stuff they mention in the movies, just in the scripts, is stuff that people are just now starting to try, and I'm like, really?
Right.
And what's the one with Clarence with the angel?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Even It's a Wonderful Life is a paranormally based movie, or a spiritually based movie, if you so choose to label it as such.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, the other thing too is people miss. Frank Capra was great, who directed It's a Wonderful Life. He was actually really interested in metaphysics, and it's not a mistake that in the beginning of It's a Wonderful Life, people forget that you see Gabriel, you see Clarence the angel, and you see God talking in the beginning of that film, and they are stars in space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not, I mean, it's just, and people miss the whole concept of that. I mean, you have It's a Wonderful Life, like you're saying, a paranormal, spiritually based movie, whatever you want to call it. It has angels in it, it has an alternate reality, and it was one of the first films where you have a person visiting an alternate universe where they didn't exist.
Right.
Well, and the movie Beyond Tomorrow with Harry Carey, which I find absolutely amazing. I'd never seen it until about a year ago. They were killed in a plane crash, and they all went back to the house, the three of them. And it showed how eventually they were sent to the light.
Right.
But Harry Carey absolutely refused because he had something to do. He had to help the people from his life before he could move on.
Right.
Which is also, I mean, that's one of the main theories of why people are explaining the data that they've collected.
Well, my point is, he wasn't stuck. He chose
right
to sit here.
Well, I mean, and I've said this before, people that claim that they can force a spirit to do anything, I would love to see them, like, push a chain. Let's see you do that, because if you can do that, then maybe you can do something with spirits. But other than that, don't treat me like I'm stupid.
For sure, absolutely.
You know?
For people who, I mean, you know, it's one of those things that people who say that they can make spirits perform for them or act out to them, it's similar to saying that you could make a person do it. I mean, I'm telling you what, I'm pretty nutty throughout my entire life, and the people who've loved me the most have tried to get me to do stuff, and I won't do it. And I'm a live person dealing with another live person.
Right.
So, you know, now you're dealing with a live person dealing with some ethereal being that might live in a, you know, separate reality from us, who's not experiencing us the same way, and you think that you can make them do something? Well, it's the whole concept of people not thinking through what they're saying and what they're talking about. The fact that people get these ideas in their heads, and then it's hard to get those ideas back out, or at least to get them to think differently about their ideas.
Right.
Well, that would sort of be like us trying to get John to do something while we're in Texas and he's
in Detroit.
In Detroit, just by mind. I mean, you can't see them, you can't feel them unless they get enough of you and smack you. But I mean, other than that, how are you going to force something you have no clue where it even is to do something?
Yeah, I mean, John wouldn't just show up in Texas if we said, well, you know, the check's in the mail. He'd wait for the mail to get there.
Right.
You know? But I mean, like I kind of mentioned before we went on air, John, I really wanted to talk because you, Mr. Roundtree, and a few other people that we have met are the, I don't want to say the avant-garde, but you kind of are, just for free thought. You take everything for face value and you will question it and beat it down, wanting to know and explain it. And so many people don't do that.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I think that the difference is you have people who are investigating the unknown and then are willing, even after their investigations, they're open-minded enough and they're sure enough about themselves to say, I've investigated it, it's still an unknown thing. And then you have people who feel that because they're investigating the unknown and they've put in some time, they feel the need that they should be able to explain it away, that they should be able to say, I know what that is now. It remains unknown, and the ability to say it remains unknown, even after you put in, 25 years or 30 years worth of research. That's a very intelligent thing to say. It's a very intelligent thing to say, to say, I don't know. I still don't know. I'm still learning. I'm still a student. I'm going to learn until the day I die, and I probably won't figure it out. I would love to, but I probably won't. Every year as I do this, it gets stranger and stranger, and the preconceived notions and ideas that I've had have been rear-ended and upended and turned upside down and flipped back around and inside out. And I have no idea what's going on, but I know that there seems to be something beyond our grasp. But I'm not willing, and you and David and the people that we know are not willing to concrete ourselves down to something until we actually know. But until then, we're willing to say, I still don't know.
Right.
Well, that's one of those differences between ghost hunters and researchers.
That's true. That is very true.
Researchers will say, okay, this is what I got, but what is it? Let's look into it further, and I still don't know, as opposed to, oh, look, a dust bug. It's an orb. It's a spirit. That's my grandma Shirley, and she's telling me da-da-da-da-da. Sorry. The orb thing still gets me.
Yeah, I mean, and John, just so you know, I have your pictures framed in a round shape, so that's a play that I think you'll giggle at when you see it later. That when it comes to asking people to think, what's the biggest hurdle you think? Let's just call ourselves educators. What's the biggest hurdle you think we face? I mean, I
know that for me, the biggest hurdle that I face with myself and that I run into with a myriad of people, and it's just the way that we are as humans. The biggest problem with learning anything or studying anything is that people have beliefs, and they believe in those beliefs for whatever reason, but to them it is the way that things are, and they cannot. It's very difficult to move someone away from a belief system. If someone is raised to believe that there is a heaven with angels who play harps, and they're raised that way for 30 or 40 years, to get them to think contrary to that or otherwise or beyond that is a very difficult thing. For people who get into paranormal research and they believe a ghost is just a wispy human that still retains all the qualities of humanity, but can walk through walls and can vanish on sight, to get those ideas out of people's heads, to have them reshape beliefs into ideas, which ideas are malleable. Ideas can flex and bend and change. That's as a teacher, as someone who tries to educate people, and as a way I want to be educated, is I want new ideas that I can test and think about and create thought experiments about. If you have a belief system, then you become concreted in the shoes of that belief system, and I think that's the biggest difficulty.
I would concur with that, and it's about control issue. It's a control issue with a lot of people, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah, they
absolutely have to. People need to be able to say, this was my grandma, or this was my grandfather, or that was a ghost. To be able to say, it's one of the reasons that people love doomsday scenarios and end-of-the-world scenarios, because it puts their death into a context that's understandable, and it gives it meaning, and it's reliable to them. We all have a doomsday. We all have an apocalypse. We don't know when it is. That's a very frightening prospect to many people. When you tell people the world will end and everyone will die on this date, millions of people get behind that idea because it takes the mystery of when they're going to die out of their hands.
Well, that's like, was it December 21st? And before that it was the millennium, and...
Yeah.
In my records, I've gone through and looked. For 2012, I went through and I looked, and just since I've been alive, I've lived through over 40 end of the world.
Right.
Well, eventually they're going to be right. Eventually.
Oh. Right.
Well, 41, because we did have that one scientist when I lived in St. Louis who said that the New Madrid fault was going to
open and swallow everybody.
Yeah, open and swallow everybody in St. Louis, and the only collect water and animals because that's all you're going to have.
Right.
And people, cleared out shelves. They were selling off their stuff. People were actually like committing suicide and stuff because they didn't want to deal with this earthquake that never hit.
But that's the thinning of the herd. Maybe that's not a bad thing. As rough as that sounds, that's true though. Because admittedly, the one thing about stupid people is they're fertile. Because look how many of them there are. And I hate to say that, but it's true.
Absolutely. Sex is a cheap and easy form of entertainment. The problem is it often results in human beings.
Yeah, right. I think they ought to, they ought to make it easier to get a gun and harder to get. You ought to have a license. You should have some kind of coursework before you're allowed to breed.
Oh, I've said it for years and years. If I have to take a class when I'm in 7th grade and then in 9th grade and 10th grade to learn how to drive a car, someone somewhere should have to take at least a one-day class on what it's like to have a child.
A pamphlet test, something.
Oh, no. Give them a real child for 12 hours. Somewhere between 6 months and 18 months.
Yeah.
And just let them listen to that child scream and the dirty diapers and the whole night. That will stop a whole lot of that.
I would have.
Well, the other thing is too, someone like me, I'm not married, I don't have any kids. I find it a very daunting, when I think about if I ever have children, because of the research that I've done, because of the type of person I am, because of the way that I think, I find it a very daunting idea to create a human being, someone who's going to struggle with the nature of reality, the nature of their existence, someone who has to go through heartbreak and love and happiness and good times and bad times. I am responsible for creating that human. I have to, if there is a soul, if there is some kind of energy that's formed that goes into a child, I have to pull that out of infinity and encapsulate it in a body that's going to be on this planet with the rest of the people and go through all the experiences of being human. That's a huge, daunting task. And people do it every single day without a thought in the world. They create more human beings without any thought of what are the ramifications of doing that.
Hell, we can't even teach parents in the United States to take their kids out of the car when it's 100 degrees outside.
Exactly.
I've forgot a lot of stuff in my life, and I can blame the Budweiser, I can blame the other stuff too, but I never left my kids in a car. I never went into a store and left my kids in the car. That just never happened. I don't get that. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's really, my joke is I'll have children. I'm the type of person who I love my potential future children so much that I will have them when I'm less self-absorbed.
Well, and that's...
And knowing John, that fits perfectly.
Yeah. And you're just practicing until then, right?
That's right.
There you go. There you go.
There's a question in the chat room. Dearborn Girl is curious to know what John's opinion is on prophetic dreams.
Dreams, it's one of those things, when we get into cognition and consciousness and the dream state, what's the easiest way for me to say this? First of all, I had a friend many, many years ago who was a neurobiologist who studied the brain. And one of the things that he told me 20 years ago that I still to this day talk about in my lectures is that the biggest problem that we have studying the brain is that we're studying it with other brains, and we don't know how brains work. So we're in this closed loop system of figuring out how a brain works, because the only way we can study a brain is with a brain, and we don't know how brains work. So it's probably one of those situations where we're never going to understand exactly what's going on in the brain and what's going on with the nature of consciousness. Now, when it comes to dreams, I think that we are very intelligent and very in tune human individuals. And we live on a planet where there are minute happenings, sounds, colors, shapes, emotions that we pick up in different portions of our brain that we might not be able to put together during the day when we're worried about bills and our shoes and what our job is doing and the person down the street's house. And when we sleep, our brain is able to puzzle piece things together and give us almost messages as to what might happen, what could happen, and what's going to happen. I don't have any problem with the brain being a puzzle-solving machine. That's what it is. It's a machine that's built to solve problems. And I think with prophetic dreams, I think with premonitory dreams, the brain is doing something that's natural. It's giving you scenarios that may play themselves out or could play themselves out.
Are you a big believer in the astral plane, or is that just a way to describe it?
I think that when I do my lectures, I talk about alternate realities, and I think that covers the afterlife. It covers the astral plane. It covers heaven. The fact that these realities are alternate to ours, there may be a place where the good essence of you goes when you die, and the bad essence of you goes somewhere else. That the corporeal part of yourself stays on this planet, but that different parts of you go into different realities, whether that be the astral plane, and sometimes you may glimpse it. I don't have any problem with that either, that you might glimpse it during this reality. That's an explanation for ghosts. I mean, and even to the people who have said that they've had contact with creatures from off of this world, the fact that these realities may be shifting and intersecting with ours to give us glimpses of the other realities, I have absolutely no problem with saying. I know that we have our language. Our language for supernatural and paranormal stuff is really screwed up, because no one has ever sat down and said, this is what these words mean. And whenever you have a dialogue, whenever you have a philosophical conversation, the first thing you have to do is you have to define the words. That way everybody understands what everybody else is talking about. And we've never done that as a community. When I ask people if they believe in ghosts, everyone raises their hand, but everyone is thinking about something differently. When you say astral plane, I think alternate reality. Some other person thinks, the Akashic record of the earth, or a spiritual plane that exists alongside of ours. So, I mean, one of the big problems we have is just the language that we're using to discuss these things.
Yeah, and just to kind of give the viewers another one that's a catchphrase, that's another thing that the paranormal loves, other than acronyms. We love acronyms.
Right.
PEMA TV is an acronym. But the word vortex, I think, is another one that gets thrown around entirely out of context and entirely isn't even understood by half the people quoting it to begin with, or what it could be. Because when you ask people, because John, I've seen you do it, and I've actually done it to people too, but when you ask people, well, what is it? And that's when you hear the tires squealing and everybody goes sideways and they start getting defensive. But if you don't know what it is, why are you regurgitating information that you don't really understand?
Exactly. And, David and I have had that conversation, David Roundtree and I have had that conversation about vortex specifically, because when David and I talk about it, we talk about vortexual energy transmission. We talk about that, you know, we talk about it in a manner that's not just throwing it out there. And a lot of people, like you just said, I completely agree with you. A lot of people throw out stuff that they hear, and they don't even read what the definition of a word means. They're just using it the same way they heard someone else use it, and so that's the way they're going to use it, and that's the way they end up using it for the rest of their lives. And again, it just comes down to how much do people really want to know, and how invested and interested are they in certain things. I talk about it in my lectures, the fact that when I was doing UFO research back in the early 90s, I never wanted to know how the air inlet tanks on an F-89C Scorpion airplane worked. I never wanted to know that. But because there was a UFO incident and it dealt with an F-89C Scorpion, I studied that plane. I studied how it worked, how it was put together, who put it together, why it was consigned, why it was brought into existence. There were studies that were done on the aerial elasticity of the wings. I wanted to know what was going on. And that really applies to all fields of study, and especially ours. They're just people, I will tell people, you need to read this book. Now, it's 400 pages, but you need to read it if you're going to understand, you know, what historical researchers were doing with paranormal phenomena. And people will say, yeah, okay, and then they might get the book or they might download it. But I guarantee you 95% of the people who've downloaded books or bought books that I've told them have not read them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's obvious every time you talk to him, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
John doesn't like me. He's never recommended a book.
I don't think you've ever asked John for a book.
I have asked John for a book.
I mean, for a book to read for a certain situation like that.
I haven't.
Yeah. John, when you were talking just right then, I got the feeling. How can we change the perspective? How can we educate people to, let's just say, what is your suggestion for us to come up with a standard vocabulary? How could we do that?
It's an insanely great and difficult question. I think the first thing that we have to do is, I love listening to people's stories. I'm only going to speak for myself. I love listening to people's stories, and as people talk to me and tell me their stories of the phenomena that they've encountered throughout their lives, as they're speaking, for whatever detriment they may feel, I interrupt them and I ask them what they meant by certain things. Because it not only helps me to understand, but it helps them to reframe, rethink, and repattern their thought about what they're explaining to me. And we both end up with a deeper understanding. I think a lot of times when we talk to each other and we discuss these things that are happening to all of us, we allow the person to go through their narrative. They've told it the same way they've always told it. They've never thought differently about it. No one's ever questioned them on it because you don't want to offend anybody. But if you ask the person, listen, I want to understand this better. What did you mean by ghost? What did you mean by you got a weird feeling? Where did you get the feeling? Was it in your arms? Was it in your legs? Once we start to better communicate with each other, I think the words will come along with it.
Yeah, because you can look on any social media and in the paranormal, we just can't get along. Or that's the way somebody on the outside would perceive it. But that's also a misconception, too, because we both know a large group of people that can work together, can investigate together,
can go out for a beer together afterwards.
Yeah, it might be a little dangerous out in the parking lot, but you'll survive. You know, there's that's a misconception too, because it's such a small percentage of trolls and how could you say alpha male personalities that have to dominate everything they're around,
or alpha females,
But I mean, I think that percentage is so small in reality, but in the perception of somebody like that's just getting involved, they wouldn't know that.
For sure. And the other thing is, too, is we've become very strange, not just our community of people who are interested in this type of stuff, but just in general, society in general. We've become, if we hear people talking loudly or passionately to each other, we assume that they're not getting along. We assume that they're fighting. And that's not true. I mean, if you're passionate, there's nothing wrong with having an elevated and excited discourse. I get super excited and passionate when I'm talking about certain things. And when I'm talking to someone else, there are many people, if you sat in on a conversation with me and certain other people, one of them being my mentor, Craig Ciccone, you would think that he and I are arguing. And we're not. We're having a vigorous discourse, and we're exchanging ideas, and we're growing ideas by having that type of discourse. So many people now feel that it's almost impolite to challenge someone. The whole point of us being here on this planet is that we challenge each other.
Right.
We challenge each other to be the best that we can be. And when we don't challenge each other, we're all less than we can be.
That's correct.
Well, and quite frankly, with our particular group, some of them tend to be really standoffish unless they know someone else in their group knows a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like the last time we saw John, there was a group of television personalities standing there who would not acknowledge my existence. But John and Nate and Chris Lean walked up and all gave me hugs, and all of a sudden I was their best friend.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me that makes no sense. I mean, if someone's asking you a question, you answer it regardless. You don't wait to see who they know before you talk to them.
Yeah. Because
right.
because heaven forbid you pass along some information to somebody and they use it. You know, that's a
right.
that's an awful thing to have happen. You know, but
well, and the other thing is too is, you know, we have this idea that, like, this might sound really crazy. I know that I'm a little crazy and I do things a little bit differently than some people. But like, I've never blocked like on Facebook's a good example. I've never blocked on Facebook someone out of my feed. And I know that a lot of people do that. Oh, I don't want to see that guy's views don't match with mine. Oh, she's crazy. She talks about this. I don't do that. I have been given a piece of technology that allows me to see what my fellow humans are doing and thinking. Mm-hmm. Why do I want to live in an encapsulated sphere of people who only think like me?
Absolutely. The only person I've ever blocked out of the 3 Facebooks that I have going is my sister.
No, I can't blame you for that one.
It's
I mean, obviously you block people that are specifically troublemakers, but just because, you know, someone has a political viewpoint or a religious viewpoint that's contrary to someone else's, that's no reason to disqualify that entire person from an exchange of ideas.
Yeah, that gets back to the whole, you know. And do you think of cell phones are part of this? And I'm going to expand on that, because since the advent of the cell phone and the
advent or event?
Well, the advent of it, because that took people from dealing face to face and having interactions there to interactions with a device in between.
Yeah, you know, I will tell you this. I'm a terrible phone person. Everybody knows this that knows me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible with cell phones in the fact that I have one and I leave it at home a lot, and I go out and do my daily errands, and I go and have lunch, and sometimes I'll go out and have drinks or dinner with people, and I will not have my cell phone on me, and it drives people crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm here to have dinner with you. I'm here to have drinks with you. I'm here to get business done. And you know, we always say they're great to have in times of an emergency. That's the catch-all excuse we've thrown on this technology we have. My phone, I think there's been one emergency that I needed my cell phone for. And that's, you know, in the past 10 years, there was one time when someone needed to get a hold of me, and they actually did. And that's a great thing. But sitting across from people that you're trying to have an entertaining or informational conversation with, it does not help to keep looking at your phone, to keep feeling your pocket to see if it rang or buzzed. That does no one any good.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I'm constantly getting yelled at. I text you. I tried to call you. you know what? My cell phone is on during work hours because it's my shop's phone, and I put it in my bag at night, and I don't answer it until the next morning when I get back to work.
And the whole point behind this is it's taken thought. It's made everybody, like you had mentioned a minute ago, everybody gets in their own little world on their own phone. Now they think they're talking to the world, and in reality, with the internet, you can.
In reality, they're losing
the human connection.
Right. A very personal form of communication because they choose to push little buttons.
That's right. Well, and John, you mentioned something else earlier that's a perfect segue for this little topic. You had mentioned earlier that you enjoyed listening to people's stories. And up until, about 3,000 years ago, that's how our history got passed along, was through an oral tradition. And people don't understand exactly how important talking to people really, really is. I mean, we're genetically wired to be together. Not the three of us specifically. That's just weird. But
I like John.
Well, I know. But anyway, I'm just saying, we're genetically designed to be a social creature. And people have to understand that. And when you start taking that away from people, that's why people have, I think that may be why we have so many trust issues. That maybe people, they become shut-ins. I would be very curious if there was a survey somewhere over the last decade, the percentage of people that were, I can't remember the phobia for it, but they were shut-ins. They were unable to leave their house. Agoraphobics. I would love to see if there's how percentage of increase, due to population growth compared to population growth, obviously. But I mean, I would be very curious to see if that percentage has leaped up since the advent of the cell phone.
Yeah, well, like you said, storytelling is a genetic component to us. We are storytelling machines. We need to talk to each other. And there is something that is majorly lacking, and I find it when I talk to people in this day and age. I see it when I talk to my 13-year-old nephew. The ability to even listen to me while I'm talking and hold eye contact with me. These things are gone, and they're necessary. I mean, communication happens not only through language, but it happens through the ability for you to know what my voice inflection is, to look at how I'm using my eyes, to see how my body is positioned. All of those things are necessary components in the storytelling part of our human system, and we're very quickly falling off the edge of that. The fact that there's no inflection with text messaging. There's no people don't. I've written things that are jokes on Facebook and they haven't gone over because you can't. Like I start to write it, I'm about to post it, and I'm like, holy crap, someone's going to think that I'm being super mean. And so I just don't even post it because I realize how limiting this communication is to us. I mean, we might get to a point where I do think it's absolutely helpful. I think it's great. I think it's a great thing that we have the ability to instantly communicate with each other, but we need to use it for what it is, which is it's a tool that helps us communicate on a deeper level, not the tool that helps us communicate, period.
Right.
I agree. And John, the chat room has absolutely lit up in the last few minutes. We have a question from there, from Dearborn Gal again. She wants to know, what is your opinion of what exactly is deja vu and why does it happen?
Well, it's strange, right? Because there are various forms of deja vu. One of them is biological. We know how it works. It's an unconscious trigger that takes the information that you're receiving at a certain time and it throws it into long-term memory and then brings it into recognition, which is kind of a backwards order. And so as you're looking at something, you're actually bringing it up out of long-term memory. So it seems like you're remembering it when in reality you're not. That's about the biological component to it. And because of the chemical drop that happens in the brain as you start to freak out because you're having this process of deja vu happen, as the chemical in your brain drops, it fades out like a dream. And that's kind of how you know that you're having that biological deja vu experience, is that it might only last 2 or 3 seconds, maybe 5 at the most, as your body re-regulates to the biological change. That's how you know you've had a biological deja vu occurrence. Now, there is deja vu that lasts longer than that. for which we have no explanation for. There's sometimes people will have deja vu that lasts 30 seconds to a minute, and some scientists will tell you it's because their brain doesn't regulate chemicals correctly. But there does, again, you come back to this cognition, consciousness part of the brain where you might be picking up information that you wouldn't necessarily have, and for some reason your brain has triggered that to happen for a certain experience to knock you back into reality, to say, don't go here or do go here. I think what's funny with deja vu is, there's a biological process that's called jamais vu, which is the opposite of deja vu, and that happens more frequently to people. And jamais vu is the easiest way to explain it is when you walk into a room and you have no idea why you walked into that room, or you start driving somewhere and you're like, where the hell am I going? It's deja vu, but in reverse. It's the feeling of having no idea what's happening.
But they're both glitches in the Matrix, right?
They're both glitches.
We do have another question, but I would also like to let you know one of your buddies is in the chat room.
Nate Lean.
Uh-oh.
Nate is in the chat room.
Oh. What's going on?
I know, we love Nate. Congratulations on your marriage, seeing this is the first time I get to actually say it out loud. We have a question from Cherry, who says, we currently live in a electronic zombie age. How do you think this affects the future of individual thinking, and how would this affect the future of paranormal research?
Wow. Well, it's we're right on this cusp of having this technology. We are still very, very new to it. I think that's why you're seeing this kind of zombification of people. We're entranced by this shiny new thing that has happened to us. I hope, and my deepest hope, is that much like shiny things, we eventually realize that it is just a shiny thing and it's just there and it's going to be there and that's fine, and we get back to the business of being human. That being said, there's such a generation, as I was saying earlier, my 13-year-old nephew, there is such a generation who does not know that it's a shiny thing. They have grown up with it. They have seen it. It has always existed for them, and so they believe it to be a thing. That's where it becomes our jobs, the people who remember what life was like before this golden computerized technological age. It's up to us to make those people continue to tell stories, continue to read books, to continue to have conversations with other people. As long as we do that, as long as we still can strip down bare bones and get one-on-one with each other and talk to each other like human beings were meant to do, we'll be okay. The problem becomes if we can't do that. My greatest hope, and this sounds strange, but my greatest hope is we have to realize that even as I speak to you now, only about 60% of the people on the planet have the internet. There's still millions, if not a billion people on this planet that don't have access to Facebook, and they don't have internet all the time, and they don't have cell phones, and they're still telling stories. They're still talking to each other and interacting like human beings. We forget about that living in the United States. We forget that not everybody has cable television. Most people don't have running water. And those are I think you're going to see a massive amount of storytellers, philosophers, poets. You're going to see them arising from the people who aren't part of the kind of electronic zombification that you see going on right now.
Okay, with that said, I have to ask you a question, John. When it comes to books, do you like to hold the book, or do you have one of those Kindle things?
I have an e-book reader that I have never used. I have a storage unit that has maybe 5,000 or 6,000 books in it, and then I have probably another 4 or 5 in my house. But I love books. I love holding them, the smell of them. me, I know that I'm, not of the technological generation like my nephew, but for me, it is easier to flip back between page 32 and page 108 just by simply grabbing the chunk of pages and flipping them than it is to swipe through or touch the button. There's something about the tactile sensation of holding them and reading them and knowing that it's there all the time. I love reading it. As soon as I'm done talking to you, I'm going to read.
Right.
Well, and it's the whole... There's nothing better than grabbing a book that you've dog-eared forever.
Well, and I was going to say, when it comes to a Kindle and stuff, I mean, you'd ruin them putting highlight on the screen, wouldn't you?
Yeah. For sure. And, I travel, I travel a lot for a person, I guess. And, people always say, well, why don't you just bring your ebook reader and then you can load a whole bunch of books on there and stuff. And, again, when I travel or drive, or when my plane lands in a city where I'm going, I go to a bookstore. I find a used bookstore if there is one, and I go and buy a book. Now, it's not only because I like to buy books, but it's because I like to walk around the city that I'm in, and I like to meet the person who works at the bookstore, and I like to talk to people and ask them where the bookstores are at. It's much deeper than just reading the book. It has so much more to do with being out in the world and experiencing the people that you will meet to go and buy a book instead of just downloading it off of the internet by yourself in your room and reading it by yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I saw the coolest thing the other day. Yes, blame Facebook. This one town has set up these little plastic, they kind of look like mailboxes outside their house, to where they fill them with books, and anybody driving by, if you see a book you like, you pull that one out and put one in.
Yep, I have one. I have one outside of my house.
Yeah?
Awesome.
I built a little wooden box. It has a little hinged door, and it's attached to the tree along the side of my house. And it says, if you want to take a book, take a book. If you want to bring it back, that's fine. And then whenever I have doubles, or whenever I go to garage sales and buy doubles of books that I have, I just leave them in there.
I think that
awesome.
is so cool, though.
That is just so cool. I would agree.
And
what's really cool is, sitting in my house and reading and hearing the door flap, and I look outside, and someone who's walking their dog is walking away with a book in their hand.
Right. And my other thing is the traveling book, where you'll take a book and leave it at the airport.
Right.
With just a little note in it to see how far it actually goes and how many people are interested in that book.
It's kind of like an earthbound version of the message in a bottle, sort of.
Yep.
Yeah. John, I know. Let's go ahead and get the advertisement out of the way. You are still doing weird lectures?
I'm still doing weird lectures. WeirdLectures.com.
And people can you also do Realm of the Weird?
I haven't updated it in a while, but all the episodes are still there. There's 14 episodes people can listen to at realmoftheweird.com.
Awesome. And just so everybody knows, and I'm going to put up a picture of you and your favorite bearded companion, Mr. Johnny Hauser. And the reason I'm going to put up a picture of the two of you is you can now see stuff from Tenco Productions and Sally Skull Productions here every Friday on PEN2.
And there's another question. And this one's from Nate, so be prepared, John.
Uh-oh.
He wants to know, do you think social media has influenced the paranormal world in a bad way or for the better?
It's a double-edged sword. I think that it has probably done, overwhelmingly, it's probably done more good than harm. I think that in the case of getting people to talk about it, the fact that we are able to openly talk about it is amazing, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's a thunderstrike that we, and a lot of people don't understand the fact that we are able to openly talk about this stuff and not be seen as wackos is startling, and that has to do with the internet and social media. Of course, the bad stuff looks like it has more of an effect, and that's always because a screaming baby is always paid more attention to than a baby that's sleeping and being good. So I think that when you see the nonsense that's generated by social media and the internet, it looks like it's more predominant, but that's just because the smart, rational, good-thinking people and the people who are becoming more open-minded about research are just trying to figure it out. They don't feel the need to scream and shout about every single thing that goes on. I think it's done way more good than bad, but we'll see how that plays out in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that, and we can stop John Tenney and,
Yeah. John, any major plans or any major happenings that you want to let everybody know where they can come find you?
I'm updating, if they go to weirdlectures.com, and I'm updating my events soon. I have a bunch of events that are going to start coming up. I took a big chunk of this year off because there's a secret project in the works. All I can tell people is find me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/weirdlectures or facebook.com/John E.L. Tenney. And friend me on there to stay tuned for big secrets and events that are coming up.
Well, and plus you always post those great memes that on there about today in the paranormal world or during a paranormal investigation. I love those. I love them.
Yeah, the new Facebook page I just started, I put I think there's 54 of them. And so they're all in one place, finally collected together. And if people want to, share them or steal them, that's fine. As long as, the thing that drives me crazy is someone will post one to my wall, not knowing I made it.
Right.
And there's no way for them to know that I made it because whoever took it cropped out the weirdlectures.com from the image.
Right. So leave the word lectures on there, folks. Give credit where credit is due.
I just go.
What was that? I'm sorry, I kind of lost you.
I just go and read John's. I don't care.
Yeah, give credit where credit is due. Stop cropping stuff you steal. You know what I mean? If you're gonna use it, just leave it on there. It doesn't kill you.
I will tell you, it was really funny, and I got to see all of my friends at work because I think it was sometime last year. Jason from Ghost Hunters posted one of my cartoons, and he cropped the weird lectures off of it.
Wow, big shock there.
And I think it was someone said, "Hey, did you see Jason posted this?" And he cropped weird lectures off the bottom of it. And I contacted him and I said, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" And by the time I called him, he said, he was like, "Call off your dogs, man." He's like, "My emails have already been flooded with hundreds of people like telling me that I should stop ripping your stuff off." And so then he apologized, and it was funny to know that all my friends went to work.
That's all. That's there's a Tenney army.
There is.
There is. I never knew.
The intellectual commandos. That's it. That's what's from now on. The IC. Don't pick on. Yeah, don't pick on Tenney, or the IC will show up at your house.
It's the Creep Crew.
The Creep Crew. That's good. That's even better. I like that.
They will creep onto your Facebook and rip you up. You mess with John Tenney.
John, once again, thank you for being on the show tonight. It's so great to catch up with you. We're not going to go this long without doing this again.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, John.
I am going to definitely be back before October.
Awesome. And like I said, folks, don't forget, you guys can see Professor Z on PEN2. You can go over there. It's a YouTube player. You can forward right to Professor Z. Are there going to be any more episodes from Professor Z?
There might be, but we did all of the episodes that we'd had from the 1950s, and then we did the 2 episodes that we had from the 1960s, and we think that we've uncovered more episodes of It's a Cartoon Show from the early 1980s.
Oh, all right. Awesome. There's no mesh half shirts, are there?
There might be.
No, but there's a lot of almost new wave music.
Pre Devo?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Lord help us all.
Help us all. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight. If you're going out investigating this weekend, please be careful. Take a pen and write it down.
Nate, miss you, guy.
John, thank you so much for being on, and everybody else, be safe.
Take care.
We'll see you guys next week.
Have a great weekend.